Asatru must be anti-racist. During the revitalization and inception of heathenry and all of its derivatives, many influential names came from a far-right background or had a far-right lean. The unfortunate reality is that many pagan religions in the contemporary age have a political bend in their history. We tend to want to shun politics and the muck and mire of political systems. I've also heard from some that everything is political, but I think that's an oversimplification. Politics, like religion, reflect values. If you value human life, human rights, etc., then your politics will reflect that. If you value defending yourself or the environment, you will vote that way, and your politics will reflect. You get the idea. We aren't the only religion with people in it who buy into the archaic idea of blood quantums or racial requirements, both of which were made up by people in power to get working class people to be disconnected and punched down rather than defy the status quo, and point the blame at the people who actually make the decisions. But we do have a reputation of being associated with those harmful ideas. Many people seeking the northern path end up finding folkish people or information, and subsequently feel the need to justify being 1/10 Norwegian on their father's side for fear of rejection. In order to dispel that myth and end the false assumption of gatekeeping through genetics, we must foster an accepting environment. We are our deeds, not our melanin content, or lack thereof. The newbie heathens must be told that it doesn't matter, and we, as old hat heathens, must know and understand how to explain why folkism is bullshit.
Bullshit!
In order to be resources that can help the neophytes enter our spaces comfortably, it's not enough to just be accepting. We have to deprogram the bigotry. You'd be amazed at the assumptions people make about racial stereotypes and presumptions. The bias we hold over things we just write off as, that's how, insert race here, is. Like we aren't all susceptible to cultural and societal differences that have nothing to do with race. Race as a concept is the slight physiological differences in climate adaptation. More or less melanin due to more or less sun. Differences in hair due to differing necessities regarding temperature and other environmental factors that our ancestors had to adapt to. For example, more body hair makes it difficult for mosquitoes to bite. And some hoity-toity blue bloods back in the day decided those differences were a good reason to invade other autonomous sentient people. Literally excuses to invade, steal, and assault, made up sometime in the 1600s by aristocrats who didn't have to do any real work. Hell, the term blue blood was invented to make the wealthy think they're different from people who work for a living on a biological level. They literally thought the aristocrats had blue blood and working class people had red blood. All that to say, race is a construction of society, not an actual quantifiable difference. Rather, it's how we categorize climate adaptations people have developed over the millennia that hominids have walked the earth, which is why you hear people say race is a social construct. The other factor in becoming anti-racist is simply listening to people who aren't like you. Because of the historical biases previously mentioned, we have a tendency to react and act as though those biases are true, rather than being the remnants of ancient propaganda. And not listening to people that have different experiences than we do is a huge problem. If 1,000 people are telling you that cops react to them differently than people with less melanin, and you say,
"You're wrong because that's not my experience,"
who are you to tell 1,000 people their experiences are invalid or outright lies? You haven't lived their lives. How do you know? Think about it. Why do we have a knee-jerk reaction to say,
"Nuh-uh,"
to the experiences of another person? Are you assuming they're lying? Do you think 26 million people got together and decided black people needed to start exaggerating police violence? Even if it's the lower projected number of 15 million BLM members, that's one giant-ass meeting that was kept a secret. We're all human. We all have families, fears, and worries, many of which overlap. Who am I to say yours are invalid? To add to that, who amongst us should be allowed to dictate the way another person lives, the choices they make? Doesn't it make more sense to leave consenting adults the fuck alone, rather than dictating their lives? The United States loves to tout freedom and fly its banner under the ideas of liberty, while simultaneously trying to control each other. I mean, how ironic is it that law enforcement has some of the strongest unions in the US while simultaneously doing violence and helping suppress others who just want the bare minimum of basic living standards that police unions are able to provide through democracy in their places of work. All of this to say, we owe it to upcoming heathens to educate ourselves in not only the lore and praxis, but also to deprogram notions of exclusionary thinking, to explain to the young neophyte that just got done watching the latest Valhalla movie that not only Valhall is the correct Old Norse, but also that they don't need to prove Nordic ancestry or Germanic heritage. And we need to be able to dispel the propaganda espoused by the folkish gatekeepers. We likely won't be able to convince some old right-winger who's set in their ways, but people who want to join anything are usually ready to conform to the values of their respective in-group. So much so that they'll turn into the folkish just because that's what they find when searching, unless we're there to tell them otherwise and set the example. That's who future generations of heathens will become. Asatru as a term was created by accepting Icelandic heathens who themselves have caught flack from folkish hate groups because they accepted LGBTQ peoples and officiated gay weddings before the countries of those heathens would legally let them. Yet the term Asatru in the US has been stolen by far-right organizations full of actual Nazis. Don't let hate groups, most of which have a very Christian perspective, steal our symbols, steal our words, and our terminology. Asatru must be anti-racist. Be better tomorrow than you were yesterday. We are the sum of our actions. Skull!